everyone, Alexa Donne here, and today I am giving you a glimpse into the secrets that are not so secret about authors and their book covers, essentially kind of how book covers happen and how much control authors have over those covers. Though I'm gonna hit you with it right up front, authors have very little control over their covers. And so it's really tough because people obviously, you know, we judge a book by its cover as much as we say that we shouldn't. You know, covers, I mean, they're marketing. They're meant to immediately evoke thoughts and feelings and hopefully get you to want to buy the book. And so people tend to have strong feelings about covers, especially readers. And it can be really tough because there's this assumption that, especially if a cover isn't great, that, you know, well, why didn't the author say something? Or, ugh, how can they like stand that? And the truth of the matter is, authors have almost no control over their covers. But I'm gonna go kind of into more of the details of how exactly the whole process works. Now, as always, a disclaimer, I'm really talking about traditional publishing here because that is my area of expertise. I am being traditionally published and the bulk of my experience and knowledge lies with traditional publishing. And specifically when it comes to the cover thing and the no control thing, it's really gonna be the biggest publishers in traditional publishing, which is the majority of publishers in traditional publishing who exercise the most amount of control over covers. I'll kind of go over some of the exceptions where an author might have a bit more leverage when it comes to their cover, but generally speaking, it's very likely that your editor will reach out to you and ask you for some, I hesitate to say feedback, but they'll say, what do you have in mind for your cover? Now, what they mean is, do you have themes in mind? Are there things in the book that you think would make a good cover? Do you have preferences for the type of cover it is? And it's always a good idea to provide them with some specific examples of covers that you like. I would stick with covers that are fairly recent, so anything from like the last 2 years, anything coming out over the next year where things already have a cover, because cover trends are pretty cyclical, like they change. So meaning your favorite cover from 10 years ago probably isn't gonna work now because cover trends evolve and change. And so something older just is gonna be a lot less relevant to what your publisher is likely to do today now for a book coming out in a year or even 2 years from now. Now here's the thing, they're gonna ask you for your feedback and you are going to provide it. And about 95% of the time, they're going to completely ignore you. This is where, seriously, it's the illusion of some control over your cover. And I know what some of you are thinking, especially if you maybe don't completely trust traditional publishing, you're like, ugh, why would you do that? Like, they ask you for your feedback and then they completely ignore you. You get a cover that's nothing like what you asked for. And to that, I'm going to throw in the disclaimer earlier in this video rather than later of, publishers are experts and they do know what they're doing. It's nice thing, it's kind of a courtesy that they ask you for your ideas, and sometimes they do listen to you. Like, they will take notes from you on colors or themes because you as the author know your book the best. Typically when your book is assigned to a designer at the publisher, they have not read your book, they're not going to read your book, so they're going to be pulling themes and ideas off of usually a synopsis. So sometimes you providing that feedback does actually help, but I'll let you in on a secret that very, very often what you get back is nothing like what you said. Designers who are experts and publishers who are experts in how to market a novel come up with their own ideas for the cover. And the secret is that a lot of authors don't like their covers. You know, once you're in the industry long enough and you like talk to people one-on-one, these are the kind of things that are never going to be publicized, but you talk to enough people and you realize, oh, I loved that cover of that book that I love and I bought it, and then you find out that the author hated it. I tell you this to let you know that it's actually really, really common. It's really common for an author to have strong feelings about their cover, either way, but including and especially when it's the negative, where they really don't like their cover. And I think that this is for multiple reasons. One, sometimes the cover is genuinely awful. Like, we've all seen those covers where we go, what were they thinking? Oh my God, that poor author. And in many cases, even if you see that author expressing love and admiration for their cover, they agree with you very often. But also, I think it happens because We as authors get very, very attached to our work, and we have ideas in our mind of what we envision for a cover. And then when what we get back doesn't match our mental vision, we have an immediate gut reaction, an emotional reaction that leans negative, like, oh, no, it wasn't what I was envisioning, so I hate it. And I'll tell you that in many cases, again, I've talked to a lot of authors, your cover grows on you. So you kind of, when you're in the author position and you give your editor the feedback and then they send you back something and you're like, it's literally the exact opposite of what I asked for. Feel your feelings, but know that you might change your mind later, especially when it comes to seeing your book in the bookstore. And this leads me to process thing / secret number, how many secrets am I revealing here? I think I might be up to 3. So here's another example of experts in the industry who know what covers work to sell books. And this is the dirty little secret, which is, if Barnes & Noble doesn't like your cover and your publisher wants Barnes & Noble to carry your book, your publisher has to change the cover. So Barnes & Noble essentially has the power of veto when it comes to covers. If they don't like that cover and they don't want it on their shelves, the publisher has to change it. So in a lot of cases, you might notice that, oh, an ARC goes out into the universe and it has one cover, but then when it comes out in Barnes & Noble, it's got a different cover. Very, very often this is because Barnes & Noble said, we don't like that cover, we think you should do something like this, and then the publisher did it. I have multiple personal friends that this has happened to. So it's another thing for you, the author, to prepare yourself for whether you like or dislike your cover. Let's say you love your cover. Barnes & Noble might make your publisher change it. There can be heartache in that sense. There can also be relief if it wasn't your favorite cover and the Barnes & Noble cover ends up being just like a real winner. I've seen it happen all ways. So really the name of the game here, the theme is you have little to no control over your cover. But I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, what about my agent and my contract? Couldn't we have something in the contract that says I have to approve the cover? Yes, but. So very few authors and agents truly have leverage over covers. You have to be a very successful / famous author or have, if you're a debut, a unique amount of leverage. I hesitate to even give you examples because it's kind of whispers that you hear on the wind of the elusive debut who actually got real control over their cover. I don't know anyone like that personally, but meaning it's gonna be a unique situation even if you've got a power agent. Generally as a debut, the control does not lie with you. And so yeah, you can put cover approval in your contract and technically your publisher will send it to you for approval. But your ability to actually give feedback and have them make changes is typically pretty minimal. You might be able to get them to budge on font choices, maybe some placement on the cover, some of the specific elements or textures, maybe even colors. But typically when you've got a whole concept, especially depending on the timing, like if your arcs need to be out in the world by a certain date and they give you your cover really close to essentially the deadline for printing your arcs, you're not gonna have much say in the matter. And again, I warn you about this just so you can prepare for all possible scenarios, because in some cases, you can express a strong opinion and you can request a complete concept overhaul and they do it. So experiences can vary widely when it comes to covers. So I just warn you authors to assume you will have little to no control, that you will have the illusion of control of giving your opinion, but generally just to take a deep breath, be a bit zen, and let it go. So now let's talk about some exceptions. I mentioned the super mega famous successful author with leverage. If you do get to that level, yeah, have your agent put something with much stronger language having actual control over your cover, though bearing in mind that again, your publisher is an expert and sometimes what the author wants or thinks they want isn't always right. But now I need to talk about the distinction between large publishers and imprints in traditional publishing and smaller ones. It is absolutely true that if you go with a smaller publisher, you're more likely to have control over your cover. Because typically when you're with a smaller publisher or even a smaller imprint, depending on the team dynamics at that imprint, even if it's at a big 5, you might have the kind of relationship with your editor and that editor with the art department where you do get to have a more collaborative experience on your cover. It runs the gamut. You never know until you're actually in a situation how things are gonna go. But as I mentioned, my advice is just to let go and enjoy the process, the crazy, maddening process of all of the things in publishing that are completely out of your control, including and especially your cover. A note about who actually designed your cover. I almost missed this. Very often and most often, your cover is assigned to an in-house designer or art director, but sometimes you're assigned to that art director and they outsource your cover, meaning they hire someone to do it, whether that means hiring an artist and then of course the art director does all of the positioning and whatnot, or they hire a freelance cover designer. If you are in a situation where your publisher is going to hire a freelance designer, if you have certain book covers that you like, if they were designed by a freelancer, you could even say, oh, I really like the work of this person, could we hire them? It's not always obvious who is designing covers, so if you kind of ask around or look at the credit that is printed on final published books of who did that cover, you can get a sense of who works on them and maybe make a special request and get a designer whose style that you really, really like. Again, it's gonna depend on your publisher. I will say that when it comes to hiring external people to design covers, that is an extra cost to the publisher and it's not always possible to get them to do that for you. But I just thought I would throw that out. And so last but not least, I think I've already covered the whole let go of control. Sometimes your publisher knows more than you and it's okay to have an emotional reaction to your cover, but also just related to that, you'd be amazed how often an author really doesn't like their cover, and then the readers adore it. I have actually been the reader who adored a cover. There is a series and I love the covers, and I was shocked when I found out that the author did not like the covers. And I was like, huh, that was the first time for me that I was confronted with this dichotomy of an author can hate their cover for good reasons that make sense to the author, but me as the reader, the book was marketed very well to me and I love the cover and it made me pick up and buy the book. So I just offer that as something to kind of think about, that there are all different sides to this and it's never as simple as having a great cover or a bad cover, loving your cover, hating your cover. Covers are a dynamic and weird thing. It's all about marketing your book to the right readers at the right moment and various different people's opinions and artistic ideas kind of coming together. So seriously, deep breaths, let it go, don't freak out too much. And if you are a reader watching this, never blame an author for a bad cover. That is a note. Like, so often, trust me, they know. And sometimes it's very gratifying when readers are like, oh, that cover was awful, and the author's like, yeah, I agree. But sometimes it can also hurt them. So blame the publisher at the least. If you think a cover is terrible, don't blame the author. So I assume this is pretty illuminating because this is not common knowledge, especially for people coming into the industry who want to be published. I know it can shock a lot of people when they get their dream deal and they even have that line in their contract about cover consultation, and then they realize it's meaningless. So yeah, that is authors and traditional publishing and covers in a nutshell. So as always, drop any questions or comments down below about covers, about any topic in publishing. I would be happy to answer either in response to your comment or I might make a video about it. So thank you for watching, everyone, and as always, happy writing.